Hi everyone, my name is Auntie Marie and I'm with Hawaii Literacy's Bookmobile program. Thank you for joining us for our very first video where we sit down and talk story with local authors, storytellers, and artists. Today we're joined by April Hale, who is the owner and creative mastermind behind Keiki Kaukau, a local toy company. Welcome, April.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. So for those who are not familiar, what is Keiki Kaukau and what is the origin story behind it?
So, as I'm sure you know, Keiki Kaukau means kid food in Hawaii. So when I had my first baby, so this was a little over 5 years ago, and he grew up into a toddler. He started being really interested in food toys. And, you know, it's a wonderful toy. It's great for socialization and role-playing, all that kind of stuff. So I realized that there were no food toys representing the cuisine of Hawaii, which we hold so near and dear. And which in itself is sort of a portrait of our diversity. If you think about, you know, where does a musubi come from? Where does shaved ice come from? These are things that were pulled in from the many cultures that make up contemporary Hawaii. And so I, you know, kind of looked into what it would take to make a little toy play set, and I launched that Keiki Kaukau play set in 2019. And people seemed excited about it to see toys and later on books and games that reflected this beautiful place that we get to call home and that kind of weren't available before then. So since then it's just been kind of playing with ideas and coming up with fun things that hopefully speak to these special childhood experiences and cultural connections of families here and beyond.
Yeah, I love how you're so intentional about showcasing the diversity of Hawaii, and you know, whether it's through the food, the cultures, the communities. And I saw that in your most recent play set that you had a little background info about Chinatown. So why is that important to you to focus on the diversity of Hawaii?
You know, I think people who have spent time in Hawaii know that this is a really unique and special place, not only for the incredible natural beauty that we're surrounded with, but also for the Aloha spirit, which is, you know, many people have different interpretations of that, but I think a lot of people here feel this sense of welcoming, of openness, and of appreciation for others. You know, we have a lot of social issues to work through like any other place, and it's also very important that we, you know, honor and uplift what is specific to Native Hawaiian culture, which is often, you know, kind of, I don't want to say whitewashed, but sort of, you know, doesn't get its fair expression in mainstream culture. So, you know, that is an important part of our heritage and who we are. But I would say most people here also feel connections to other cultures, whether it's from, you know, ancestors who came to work on the plantations a few generations ago, or the various reasons that people have been drawn to Hawaii, create this very unique melting pot where, you know, for the most part, people have been able to come together and live in mutually supportive ways, you know, that people not from Hawaii, that might be foreign to them or that might be inspiring to them.
Yeah, I love how you put so much thought into your products. You can really tell that you put a lot of effort into them, a lot of effort and intentionality behind them. So how has being a mother and a former educator influenced you as a business owner?
I certainly draw inspiration from my kids and what they're interested in, especially as they've grown a little bit older. They're 3 and 5 now. I've started playing a little bit more with like games because that's something that they're finally able to do, you know. My 5-year-old is almost able to read, and so that's super exciting for me because reading was such a special thing for me growing up. And I think it's just such a rich and rewarding activity for anyone. So kind of watching my own kids, and of course I know a lot of other kids from teaching, from my friends' families and whatnot, and so really just kind of pulling inspiration from my environment and the young people I know.
April, you've been so generous with your time, and you know, you just donated more of your books. Can I ask you, why did you decide to include books in your shop?
Since I was a little kid, if you had asked me what I wanted to do when I grew up, I would have said I want to be a children's book author and illustrator. And it's funny because it's like it was a childhood dream that sort of like went by the wayside. As you grow older, you start to think like what is practical and making books and publishing to me as I grew older seemed like something inaccessible. The whole publishing world seemed very intimidating, right? Like the traditional route is you have to write a manuscript and then you submit it to different publishers and like you brace yourself for rejection because everyone says like it's so hard to be the one who makes it through. Most children's book writers don't even get to choose their illustrator.
Yes.
And the pictures obviously, are a huge factor in what the feel and experience of a book is. So I was kind of lucky through Keiki Kaukau to have, sort of started out with this line and building a little brand, and that gave me a little bit of an audience to share these books with once I made them. But yeah, I went the self-publishing route, and I just kind of tried it, and I think that's what anyone should do if they have a book idea is, why not put it out into the world? And what's the worst that can happen, right?
Yeah.
And it's so special to be able to reach children and families in that way through a story and through these little vignettes of images and words that maybe feel reflective of some part of their life or maybe even teach them something that they didn't know before.
Right. So you mentioned that you've always wanted to be a children's author. Were you a big reader as a kid?
Yes, for sure. So I had one sibling growing up, but I was kind of lonely some of the time, I think. Like where I grew up, it was a lot of older people. There weren't a lot of kids around to play with. And this was pre-smartphones and pre-social media and all this stuff. So from when I could read, around 6 or so, I just remember reading constantly. And it was just, such a treasure to be able to explore different worlds and I'm sure you're a big advocate for reading for many reasons, but to sort of live through all these experiences from wherever it is that you are in your head. And reading was always very special to me growing up. And something I certainly wish I had more time for now. I miss it. But yeah, that's a gift that I hope all children can enjoy.
Do you have any favorite authors from your childhood?
Oh gosh.
Any favorite books?
I always loved like the Berenstain Bear books when
I was little. They're still popular.
Yeah, my kids read those too. When I was a little older, like I went through all the American Girl books.
Wow.
Especially back then, they were really about like telling the history of America through the coming of age of a young girl at these different stages. So a lot of them immigrant stories as well. So I think that was kind of captivating for me, sort of like learning the history of America through these stories, because people hold on to stories better than like facts and dates, right? And like if you kind of make it personal and compelling.
Right. More relatable.
Yeah. I always loved books that were about like they were like the Boxcar Children or things about like, clubhouses and tree houses.
Right.
Little
They're still popular
kid
to this
adventure
day.
places.
Yeah.
So that kind of was part of the inspiration for my second book, Aloha Friday Keiki Club. But yeah, and as my kids, as I spend a lot of time reading with them, we have a bunch of local authors in our home library, and there is a wonderful selection now of picture books that are written locally, and sort of rediscovering all those different stages of reading through my kids.
What do you think makes a good book?
Oh gosh, it's hard to say because I think so much of it is timing, like what speaks to you at one point in your life.
Yes.
What you get excited about, like my 5-year-old is really into dinosaurs right now, so that's sort of a gateway to
what 5-year-old isn't, right?
Right. So, but a year ago he wasn't, so it can be hard to predict. One of the experiences I loved most as a young adult was that just like browsing in a library or a bookstore, because it's almost like looking for a friend on the playground, right?
I love that.
picking up a book and kind of getting a little taste of it, reading a few pages, and just that practice of sort of exploring a bookmobile or whatever the space is that gives you that array of books, because you never know what's going to speak to you in that moment.
Yeah, and congratulations, by the way, on your 4th book, the Lei Book.
Oh.
How do you decide what to write about?
I don't know. It just kind of, the first one felt natural.
Yes.
Kaukau Time, because it was when I had launched the company and all about the food, and the last page is kind of like our Hawaii Ohana has roots all over, and we're bringing these flavors together. I don't know. I guess the books have kind of come hand in hand with the toys, like the Lei. A lot of sort of nostalgic things. I guess again, as I relive parts of my childhood through my kids, I'm kind of reminded of what was so special and unique about growing up in Hawaii, and just kind of putting that on paper.
Yeah, that's awesome. What do you enjoy the most about being an author?
The creative process is really fun, coming up with, working with my illustrator to come up with how we're going to visually represent things. And she's incredible. She just brings everything to life. So I told you when I was a kid I wanted to be like a children's book author and illustrator.
Right.
I kind of failed on the illustrator part, so I never turned out to be a very good artist. But the silver lining is that now in what I do is that I get to work with wonderful illustrators, whether it's drawing a food puzzle or making a book. So I love that collaboration because I know I can't do it myself. And then of course it's just so special to know that a little story or rhyme or something that you've created is in the hands of a child and is something that is shared between a child and their parent or tutu or auntie or someone special in their life.
Yes. I know my son and I love your books. I was telling you this about this morning when I was packing up the books. He was like, "Where are you going with those?
Oh.
It's mine." But you mentioned that you like to collaborate with local artists. How did you find your illustrator? Because you also said that most of the times authors don't get to choose their illustrator.
Yeah, so I've worked with illustrators both from Hawaii and elsewhere. So my book illustrator is actually Indonesian, and I just happened upon her work on Instagram, but I saw that she had a very dynamic style, that she could capture the energy of children, and that she was also familiar with the sort of tropical landscape similar to ours. For other projects, like for products, I've just within the local design and illustrator community, which fortunately it's fairly easy to connect with a lot of those people since Hawaii is small. I've been able to work with other people like Jordan Aris, even Punky Aloha for a small project. She's amazing, and others going forward.
So as a self-published author, what are some of the challenges you've come across and how did you overcome them?
Self-publishing is a little scary, you're kind of putting yourself out there and you don't have this sort of team and reinforcement of having an editor and other people to promote your products. I think the promotion side of stuff is difficult because it's a little bit awkward to be you're to be self-promoting, right? Versus having someone else do that for you. I think, my expectations were not super high to begin with. It wasn't like I had in mind, I need to sell this many books to be successful. My bar was low. I was like, if this gets into the hands of any kids and they enjoy it, then awesome, so starting with, low expectations, I think,
but look
set
how
me
much
up for
you've
success.
Grown.
Yeah,
Everybody loves your stuff.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you to say. And as I've said, there's so many great local kids books, and fortunately with books you can never have too many, right? So that's one of the things that I, as a parent, feel comfortable spending freely on. With toys, I'm like, gotta wait for Christmas to your birthday. But books, it's why not? Let's just have more books. So Anyway, I haven't hit too many stumbling blocks. I'm sure, to be honest, if I had an editor or like a team, that maybe the books would be better, right? Like if you get more perspectives and more feedback. But it also would have taken a lot longer to make them, to bring them to life.
But I love them just the way they are.
Oh, thank you so much.
So, my son does too.
So
Bookmobile kids do too.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm kind of the kind of person who's just like, oh, let's just like put it out there and try, you know.
See what happens.
See what happens, and you know, you can always edit the next version, and if you want to tweak a sentence here or there, and they're short books, they're like
that's a great outlook, like a less stressful outlook.
Yeah, right. I know we live in an age where everything like exists forever on the internet, and it feels very permanent. But you know, if you do another print run, you can edit things. So it's okay to revise and improve. And yeah.
Do you have any advice for any young aspiring authors?
I mean, I think the main thing is just to be guided by your passion and to look to your environment. For inspiration, to real people and things and sensory experiences, and then to just do it, right? Like regardless of if your audience is just one person or, you know, thousands of people, to just make it for the joy and fulfillment of making, and then anything beyond that is just going to be an extra reward.
Awesome. So you've been around for 2 years now?
2.5, yeah.
2.5 years. What is your ultimate dream for Keiki Kaukau?
Oh gosh, it's so hard to say. This truly sort of happened organically, and I never set out to be like the toy lady or anything like that.
That's a good name.
Which is like what the preschoolers, when I pick my kid up at school, call me. Like, aren't you the... But it just sort of snowballed, and I think maybe part of it was the pandemic, right? Like everyone's sitting at home like, oh, what do you do? Like, I'll just make some more stuff and see what sticks. So I don't, long term, I don't really, I don't really want to be like the head of a company. I don't really see myself in that role because I value time and I miss things like reading and, slow living, and having a small business is not really conducive to that a lot of the time. So I hope that Keiki Kaukau will live on in some way, shape, or form. But, I don't have aspirations of being the next Mattel or anything like that.
No, I completely hear you about wanting things to slow down. Even though we're in a pandemic, it seems like things are happening so much.
Yeah, and pandemic, like for parents and for people without kids, is a totally two different universes.
How has the pandemic as a parent been for you?
All things considered, we have had a very good experience because when it started, my oldest was not even in kindergarten yet. So a lot of this, we did have school closures for maybe 3 months, but and then intermittent ones after that. But we were lucky that our kids could be in person in school for a good part of the last 2 years. And I know that's not the case for everyone. I'm lucky that my job as a entrepreneur, it's flexible, right? Even though there's always a mountain of stuff to do, if my kids get sent home and I need to be with them, I can do that. Whereas I know it's more stressful for, parents where both parents are working and have to be somewhere at a certain time and scramble and all that. So it's been challenging in the ways that it's been challenging for everyone. It's a bummer to be isolated and the masks and the distancing and everything. I feel like we're at a stage now where there's some light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, we're hanging in there.
So yes, fingers crossed that we won't be talking about this a year from now, but we'll see.
Thank you so much, April.
Before
we let you go, is there anything else you'd like our viewers to know about you or Keiki Kaukau?
Not that I can think of. No, I'm so thankful for what you do, bringing the joy of reading all across the islands. And there's so many books out there. Parents are always going through, books as their kids grow older. And if you go to any Goodwill or Savers, they have mountains of wonderful books. So just kind of creating and maintaining that home library, just so that books are always, at arm's reach, I think is just such a valuable gift that we can give our kids.
I totally agree. Thank you again, April, for being here and for being our first guest.
Thank you so much.